Welcome to Rethinking the Dollar. Today I'm excited to have my guest, Mr. Malay Panchal. He's the founder and CEO of Pure Global Cannabis Incorporated. Malay is an entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in the B2B technologies as well as retail and mail order pharmacy. Today he's joining us to share his thoughts on the economy as well as some developments in the cannabis sector. So Malay, welcome to Rethinking the Dollar.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you sitting down with me. Looking forward to diving into just getting a better understanding of the cannabis sector. And so here on Rethinking the Dollar, I love to bring to the viewers new opportunities as well as disruptive technologies and industries. And I believe the cannabis sector will definitely be one here in the United States as well as where you're at in Canada. And so before we dive into some of those things, I typically start off with some Rethinking the Dollar questions. And so what comes to mind when Malay Panchal hears the words Rethinking the Dollar?
Well, for me, we work hard for our dollars, and in this day and age, it's getting harder and harder to sometimes even make ends meet, let alone getting ahead. So rethinking the dollar to me is those dollars that how you earn them, how you make them work. In the end, you need dollars to survive and to get ahead in life. So you need to rethink your strategies, and there's those that kind of put their money to work, if you will, in a smart way, and there's unfortunately a very small fraction of the population that really take advantage of some of the investment opportunities out there. And so I think people need to sort of think outside of the box and try to find strategies that have worked for others.
Sounds good there. Now, one of the things with Rethinking the Dollar is to basically expose and share information on monetary and financial practices. And as a small entrepreneur myself, and you yourself being an entrepreneur there in Canada, what are some things that you would give advice-wise for those that are inspiring to be entrepreneurs in this day and age with all the opportunities and technologies that's advancing things and disrupting industries? What are some things that you would share with the viewers on entrepreneurship and the importance of exploring new opportunities?
Sure. So as you know, technologies are evolving all the time. New businesses are emerging. As the population evolves, all kinds of opportunities change all the time. As you know, the .com industry came, the internet came. We had all kinds of new industries that were born. Also new science-related industries that are often emerging. So, investors can look at opportunities in emerging sectors for looking for the new apples that are coming out. Also, those that are looking for jobs. It's great to look for jobs in emerging sectors. There's a lot of new ones that are coming out. In the past, there were your traditional ones. So it's a very exciting time. I think with technology, you have newer and newer opportunities for the way commerce is conducted and people buy their products, which is what all business really is rooted in. So yeah, it's a really exciting time ahead.
Now, one of the things I want to get into a little bit of your foundation there. And so for those that may not know who you are, I know that you have 20 plus years in entrepreneurship and business in general. And so you're geared more so towards the pharmaceutical industry now in the cannabis sector. Can you give us a little bit of your background, how you arrived at that through your 20 years of business plus to this current industry you're in now?
Certainly, I'm a pharmacist by training, actually. So although I come from a family of business and entrepreneurs and industrialists and a culture of business, my father came from the engineering field as well. And he really advised me to choose a field that was somewhat of a recession-proof, and medicine really was the first thing. And so I really had one option growing up, is to become someone in the medical field, and I did set out to become a physician, and decided to pursue that through pharmacy first. And ended up staying in that field because I felt that it gave me much broader opportunities in terms of business and creating opportunities for employment. So although I was very passionate about computers and being in technology, I probably should have gone into computer science. I was a champion programmer growing up, but I came out of pharmacy school and I thought, hey, why not check out Silicon Valley, where the .com bubble was erupting. And I really got a sense of where industry was going in that respect, and saw that the pharmaceutical industry was going to employ the internet at some point, and actually built my first startup, which was a B2B logistics platform for the pharma sector. After that, I went into community pharmacy, where I realized that baby boomers and the aging population wanted more service and more natural medicine options. So I deployed a holistic pharmacy, and would have probably stayed in that sector were it not for huge cuts in that sector. Then went off to industry, pharma industry, where I worked with a lot of large pharma brand manufacturers and clinical trials, global clinical trials in terms of automation and patient adherence solutions, as we call them, for data collection and really. The new way business is being run is through data-driven decisions, and so yeah, my entrepreneurship's really my training, everything I think is culminated now when I recently discovered the cannabis sector about 4 or 5 years ago that was emerging, and saw a brand new sector being born, and so all my experience and skills have really culminated for me to apply all that knowledge in this new sector. I'm very excited about it.
Now, from a business standpoint, let's talk a little bit about the Canadian economy, because as I mentioned earlier, that we are trading partners. We're not too far apart. I'm in Michigan, basically, right, not too far from Toronto. But yet, over the last year, there's been a lot of back and forth in regards to tariffs and trade or whatnot. Now, I'm assuming from a business standpoint, you might keep your ear to the ground just to see what and how the trade war, tariffs might impact the pharmaceutical as well as the cannabis developments in Canada. What are some of your thoughts on our relations in those department there? Is there any interruption or disruptions that could come from this tariff situation with the U.S.?
Well, listen, trade wars and tariff wars are never good. Tariffs are a valuable tool, in my opinion, although I'm not a business professional. However, logically speaking, tariffs can be a valuable tool to protect certain industries in an economy. For example, Trump talks about the large tariffs that are imposed on milk. Canada is a very tiny country, and if we were to protect our very small milk industry versus a large population where the economies of scale are much larger in the States, so the cost is much lower, they would wipe out our entire industry. So there's a valuable way to leverage tariffs, but just to throw them out for and to protect jobs, obviously. But in the end, the consumers end up paying for it. So I think currently what's happening is very damaging to both sides. It's resulting in a lot of uncertainty, and I think it's very one-sided. I think for consumers, in the end, it's better to have less obstructions and hurdles and costs to deal with. Having said that, the cannabis sector is a little bit more immune to the current tariffs and trade wars so far, anyways. Canada is really the only commercialized, federally legalized country in the G7 that can actually treat cannabis as a commercial product. Because in the US, it's still federally illegal. So there's no trade anyways between those two products currently happening. Having said that, there are certain products, nutrients, equipments, things that are needed primarily from the US for Canadian producers like us. So, we'll be imposed with some increased taxes, and to be honest, it causes us to look for sources on the local side, and this ends up costing American jobs and dollars. So in the end, I think it's going to hurt both sides, unfortunately.
Right, and so from the explanation there, it mentioned about cost there, and so I want to get into the whole regulation side, because here it's a lot of back and forth on the federal aspect of it, whereas in Canada there, regulation seems to be loosening a little bit and allowing you guys to get into more research and development there. So give us some of the difference between the regulation side of thing and how it seems to be a little bit more freely available for the Canadian economy to grow from that sector, whereas in here in the U.S. it's kind of clamped down, and it seems like it's somewhat of an internal war amongst states here with that. So share with us some of the regulation side.
Sure. So as many of your viewers probably know, there's about 30 states that have some sort of, and of course the District of Columbia, that have some sort of legalization for especially medical marijuana, which is phenomenal. It's over half the states, and 8 of those plus the District of Columbia have actually gone a step further and introduced adult legalization, recreational use of it, including California being the most recent, and Massachusetts about to come online, I believe, this month. And so what's different there is, federally speaking, unfortunately, it's still a Schedule 1 product, and this really imposes a lot of restrictions on, like you said, research, real commercialization, really a robust system, just like your everyday products that can enable commerce to be conducted both within the borders and outside the borders. So yes, it's a bit of a tug of war, really, between states and the federal entities. You have some old school thoughts. Really, the DEA is the main one that suffers from cannabis legalization in any form, because their entire budget is based on enforcing those cannabis laws. And really interesting, that's why cannabis was made illegal, because the DEA, when alcohol was made illegal in 1930, he was going to be out of a job, so he needed a new product. And it's interesting, why cannabis is illegal still in the States, and why that international sentiment has been propagated for the last 70 or 100 years. It's really for the special interests of a few bodies, and that's changing now. In Canada, however, we had a Supreme Court a finding that required a certain patient to get access to cannabis for his life. It was found this patient suffered from a condition, and he had tried all other pharmaceutical products, and he needed this to sustain his life. And this led to regulations to be formed to help the government identify a path to get Canadians access to cannabis. And it started very small. Then there was an advanced stage for MMAR and then MMPR. And now you have an entire commercialized system where you can actually research and produce commercialized products for export. And Canada now, of course, October 17th is taking that step further, similar to California, in terms of full adult legalization, where you won't need a prescription anymore. And it's on a different scale as well. It's fully federally sanctioned, unlike in the US. So you'll have a much more robust industry, where you have much more strict guidelines in terms of packaging and things of that nature. So the US has started. Canada, unfortunately, for the US is going to be far ahead. But when the time comes, I'm sure things will catch up.
Right, so that's a great explanation. Now, one of the things I want to hint at is the idea that cannabis, apart from the last, and from me being aware of it, it's been 3-4 years of actually seeing it grow, especially in the Michigan area, where there's more medicinal marijuana kiosk type stores on the outside of Detroit there. So I'm just recognizing how serious of a business this is, and how it could possibly disrupt the pharmaceutical industry as far as the conventional drugs and medications that are prescribed. And so are there any similarities? Because a lot of the younger generation are really in tune with the whole cryptocurrency sector. So there's a variety of coins out there, like, cannabis coin, pot coin, all those investment type opportunities that people look at. Are there any similarities in this disruptiveness of how cryptocurrencies could possibly threaten the financial sector bank-wise, and how cannabis possibly could disrupt and threaten the general pharmaceutical side of things?
It's very interesting point. I don't think, to the extent, cryptocurrency has a very powerful technology. I'm by no means an expert in that area, but clearly it offers technologies that could really bring down costs for consumers and bring down layers of red tape, or whatever you want to call it. So certainly it has some disruptive potential for the financial industry. However, the financial industry is multiple trillions of dollars. So I think right now the fraction that Bitcoin is occupying, it's a very hairline, and so it's never going to, I think, cause a collapse. And similarly speaking, the pharmaceutical industry, listen, pharmaceutical products have their place in our healthcare system. Even though most of them are very toxic and often, not prescribed in an appropriate manner, vast majority of them help our population, survive. And so cannabis isn't going to replace the vast majority of those critical components and pharmaceuticals. However, there's a lot of conditions out there that are shoot in the dark. The physician really doesn't have any good tools at their disposal, and often they're very toxic options. In the case of pain, for example, pain management, we have some very toxic opioid type of drugs that are at the arsenal of physicians that in some cases leave patients in dire conditions, addicted to these very physiologically toxic drugs. Again, cannabis doesn't have that sort of effect in terms of changing the physiology body, where the person is really physically dependent upon it. Having said that, it's very potent in certain conditions. We've seen very powerful effects in certain types of epilepsies, migraines, certain neurological diseases. There's evidence in reduction in Alzheimer's plaque formation. Goes all the way to potential anti-tumor properties. So as benign as cannabis is relative to many products out there, if you eat a cigarette, you will die. If you eat an entire, ounce of cannabis, you probably vomit or fall asleep. So toxic profile is really good. However, there are many pharmaceuticals that are going to be less favored, I think, once cannabis takes a stronger foothold. and I think alcohol and cigarette. I think all those products are going to see a reduction in use to a certain extent once cannabis becomes more and more in commonplace.
And so, in preparing to speak with you today, trying to brush up on just find out what, the whole cannabis, some of the behind the scene things that's not real known about. So, came across the word cannabanoids, and so I read something about 108 or 113 different types of extractions, THC, CBD. Can you give us some information for those that may not be too familiar with some of the foundational things of the cannabis industry that's causing this disruption in the health industry?
Absolutely. So your two key compounds in cannabis are THC and CBD, which is a tetrahydrocannabidiol and cannabidiol itself. And then beyond that, there's about 108 or 113 and growing number of cannabidiols, cannabinoids, sorry, that have been discovered, THCs and cannabinoids that all have different effects and what we call an entourage effect. There's also terpenes that are added to this, 30, 40, and growing numbers. So really hundreds of chemicals in the cannabis plant that have a combined effect. And there's many types of cannabis, that I always like to explain that that DOPE acronym or that, the person that's walking around looking all doped up, if you will, he must have been smoking an indica or something that's really causing, a lot of drowsiness, because there's cannabis that can wake you up. There's cannabis that can cause drowsiness. There's some that are better for sleep, some that are better for pain. And we're actually looking to identify which ones are best for certain medical conditions. And so that's what our company is a little bit different than others. We're setting out to actually invest in the research to really identify how this medicine is impacting our body. A lot of the evidence and research that was done in the past was to look for negative effects, because the government was looking ways to increase their ammunition against the product. And often these studies were kind of skewed because the patients were often using alcohol and cigarettes too. So today we need to have some hard evidence, of some real evidence, and really identifying the benefits of this product. And I see some tremendous opportunities going forward.
Oh, interesting there. Now, so that leads into my next question in regards to, you hinted at it earlier, I think I read the Cannabis Act, which passes the October 17th. And so cannabis it was legalized in 2000, but yet 2018, it fully reaches legalization as far as being able to reach the streets. So what do you think brought about that 18-year gap of now the government allowing this type of research and development where it's going to really help out your guys' economy there? Why do you think it took so long for it to come about that way?
So in 2000, there was the Allard case that required the Supreme Court ordered Health Canada to give cannabis to medical patients through some sort of safe mechanism. So the medical component was interesting. So that was there from 2000 up to really 2017, 2018. But the current government had mandated in their platform when they were coming up for election that they were actually going to take this a step further. They realized that the strict cannabis laws were not working in terms of imposing access for youth, which is very harmful. We know cannabis can be very harmful for children if taken too young. It can obstruct in some cases brain development or what have you. Obviously, this entire black industry, underground industry, which is billions of dollars, is not benefiting anyone except organized crime. So this current government, really thought steps ahead. And listen, why don't we regulate this product? We'll police it. We'll develop a commercial system that can look at how to properly produce it in a quality assessed manner, and take organized crime out of this. Why should they be benefiting from it? And when they're selling it in our high schools and so forth. So it is a different step that the current government has taken from medical to legalization, and it's quite a step forward. And Canada is the only country so far of the G7 that has done that. There are about 20, 30 countries around the world that also have done medical cannabis laws. However, recreational is another step, and it's going to happen elsewhere as well, a matter of time. But it's quite a leap forward from medical laws.
Yeah, and so just the idea of them taking some of the money out of the black market and from the illegal side of things will definitely it would disrupt the drug industry or whatnot in the illegal sense there. Now, from a dollars and cents standpoint, what's the current dollar amount of the cannabis industry legal wise? The medicinal as well as the recreational uses purposes. Well, how much money is it generating now? And now that this new Cannabis Act is into play, it's going to change the industry a little bit more. How much money do you think it will generate in the future going ahead?
Well, I won't get into specific dollars. I don't have that data currently available with you, but I can tell you that in Canada that there's about 350,000 patients currently registered in the medical system where you have to get a prescription and enroll with a licensed producer to get your cannabis patients shipped to you through online sales. The adult legalization market is expected to represent an 8 to 10-fold increase in the market size. Now, that's just within Canada. Our company is Pure Global Cannabis, and we're really looking at the international opportunity. Countries like Germany have 80 plus million people, and they have medical cannabis laws there, but they don't produce any of themselves. They're starved of the product. They need it. They need to countries like Canada to export to them. There's a growing list of countries like this that require, Canadian clean cannabis, if you will, that's been produced in a very pharmaceutical manner, and GMP grade, which is good manufacturing practice. Which is a standard that doesn't exist yet in the U.S. when it comes to cannabis production. This enables the export of the product to places around the world. And when you look at the international market versus Canada is a very small country, 35 million people versus Europe, 500 million people, South America, 650 million people, Asia, obviously over billions of people. And we believe all these countries are going to be coming online very soon because there are certain conditions that are treated best with medical cannabis and a growing list. And we want to be at the forefront of producing products that are going to be easy for consumers to take. These products ultimately can be shifted into the recreational market. We just change the label really and put a rec brand on it, or adult legal, or what we like to say is the wellness category in the cannabis sector. So that's going to be representing a much larger increase in all these markets around the world. So we see ourselves having a step up in terms of first producing those end products, not focusing on just the dried flower, those end products that are ultimately going to be on the retail shelves. And we want to have an entire section one day in those future retail shelves. So in terms of industry size, Canadian, it's going to be about a 10-fold increase. Currently, you can only export medically, but the medical market internationally is growing and expected to be tens and tens of billions of dollars, and it's very nascent at this stage, probably in the couple of billions range at the moment. So the opportunity ahead is again very new industry. The road ahead is very long and very bright.
Now let's get into your company a little bit, Pure Global Cannabis Incorporated. So how long have you guys been up and running? Give us some of the basics of your organization area, your team and whatnot, and some of the things you guys are currently working on project-wise.
Sure. So I started the company about 4.5 years ago. Myself and a pharmacist and physician realized an opportunity in the sector, and it was a little bit of a roll of the dice at the time. And we started a company called MediSense, Sense for Sensimilla. Sensimilla is a scientific term for the female cannabis plant, which is seedless and is what's actually everyone is growing in their cannabis facilities. But then there were a lot of Medi this and Medi that companies, and we thought, if you were going to buy vitamin C, would you buy medical vitamin C, or would you buy pure vitamin C? And so the word pure seemed like, it resonated more in terms of the kind of product quality people will be looking for. So Pure Sense was our company that we founded and which has become licensed just at the end of 2017 under the ACMPR, which is the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulations, which is the laws that allow our commercial entities to produce cannabis for the Canadian market and ultimately for export as well. And I put a team together of some top professionals. Listen, cannabis was again an organized crime, underground industry, cottage industry. People were growing it in their homes or garages. Commercial modern horticulture technologies had not been implemented in this sector on a large scale yet, and that's what we're looking to do. So I found the most qualified and decorated commercial grower I could find, who has academic accolades as well as patents. He's developed a multi-layer hydroponic system for other plants, medicinal and otherwise, and so we're applying those technologies and those best practices really from the IT industry, from the marketing industry, from modern business, digital industries, in terms of being a digital company that's agile and using methodologies, data-driven, resource allocation and decision making. So we're really bringing in best practices practices to the cannabis sector to make a real, say, turbocharged cannabis company that has just come out of the gates. We've just found a tremendous team of world-class, highly experienced, tenured individuals that are very passionate about this sector. And then we needed the fuel. So we found, I think, the best financing partner we possibly could have in a group that's behind a number of billion-dollar projects. And now we're just launching in Canada. We just listed publicly last Thursday, and I think in the US we'll be coming out, I believe, tomorrow on the TSX Venture Exchange, which is different than the Toronto Stock Exchange. It's the smaller exchange, which is out of Vancouver, but enables us to have less cost in terms of listing, and ultimately we will list on the larger board. But it represents a tremendous opportunity in terms of a ground floor opportunity for investors before we hopefully join the ranks of some of our peers, and I'm sure you've heard of some of them.
All right, so sounds good. So as far as you guys listing now, what's going to be your ticker in the TSX or here when you guys come to America? What's going to be ticker information?
So again, it's a TSX Venture Exchange, the TSX.V, and those that are interested in the US, you'll have to get in touch with your broker and specify specifically that I'm looking to buy a stock from an exchange in Canada, and there is access, although you have to have some, it's not your traditional means. The ticker we're very excited about is actually Pure, P-U-R-E, and so it's very easy to find. There is another Pure out there, which is Pure Biosciences on the New York Stock Exchange. Don't get confused with that one. Do look for Pure Global Cannabis Inc., which is a Canadian-based cannabis company, and PURE again is a ticker on the TSX Venture Exchange.
All right, sounds good. And also for those that are interested in finding out more information, I'll have a link below this video here that'll get you more information on the developments with the company here. And so some of the things as I was reading up on you guys is the breakthrough agricultural process you guys are putting together. Can you share with us a little bit of details of how that works?
As I mentioned, the world-class grower that we have employed spent the last few years really researching all of the methodologies currently being employed for large-scale cannabis production. There's methods called deep water culture, aquaponics, bubbleponics, ebb and flow, and the list goes on. So he studied all these methodologies and found some of them had some very positive attributes, but some negative attributes. So he actually combined them all and used the positive aspects of some and removed the negative aspects of others, and we've created something what we call a MultiPonic system. And what this will enable is to really leverage vertical farming technology and enable us to grow several layers of canopy as opposed to the traditional one. In some cases, some do manage to get two. And leveraging modern horticulture technologies, which are, it's a science and stuff that, I would have never even have imagined, as I'm sure exists in a lot of different fields. There's ways to make a 12-foot tall sativa just grow, a foot and then make it flower, as opposed to wasting all that energy in that stalk and those leaves and those roots that are ultimately going to be thrown away anyways. Why put all that in, waste? So instead, we're focused on the flower, growing smaller plants, many more canopies. So you're making a much more efficient environment. Also, key point is the environment as well. Spending the extra dollars and creating an environment that's going to prevent disease, contamination, and that's all part of it. But altogether, our system is going to result in at least doubling or tripling or maybe even more than your traditional methodologies that are currently being employed, which is going to lend to a more consistent product, a better quality product, and at a better cost point.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, Malay Panchal, it's been great having you on Rethinking the Dollar. I definitely, learned a lot about the cannabis industry, and looking forward to diving into more of the information behind the scenes as well. And so any last notes you'd like to leave the viewers on Pure Global Cannabis, as well as just any thoughts on the future of cannabis and how this could be a great opportunity for those that are able to get in on the earlier stages with your company, as well as just the sector in general?
Absolutely. So Canada, again, is at the forefront of this industry. It is the first G7 country that has legalized cannabis for commercial distribution, internationally speaking. And Canadian companies like ourselves that are really looking at the next stages of where this industry is going and bringing in best practices from the pharmaceutical industry and so forth are really going to have a unique opportunity to be sort of first movers And this industry is really in a nascent stage at this moment, and everyone wants to catch the wave before it takes off. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity to catch that wave for the wise investors. Those that are following the sector may have heard of some of the companies out there, such as Canopy or Aurora or Afria, MedRelief, Kronos. These are all multi-billion-dollar companies already trading on the stock exchange, and they got out of the gates a little bit earlier than us, and they've done some terrific stuff. And we're following a path that's actually been laid down by them. You know, when we call them our peers, because we're very thankful for them sort of paving the way, if you will. However, you know, we're kind of the second wave, and we get to learn from a lot of their mistakes and be more efficient and be more tactical in our approach. So there's a significant opportunity for us to not only catch up quickly, but perhaps even go beyond some of them. So, like I said, we just got out of the gates. Our company has just taken off, or the ship has just been cast into the water. And pretty soon we'll be climbing and getting into the race and joining the ranks of some of our top players. You know, the average market cap in the sector is north of $600 or $700 million. And we are currently around the 50 million range. So the growth potential just in the mid-range is there, and we believe we have the wherewithal to be really a top 10 and eventually top 5 player on the international stage. So we welcome the opportunity to prove ourselves, and look forward to sharing exciting stories of our growth ahead.
Definitely. Well, Malay, thank you for joining us on Rethinking the Dollar. Looking forward to continue to follow your progress there at Pure Global Cannabis. Thank you for sitting down with us, and wish you guys the best at Pure Global Cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.